All right, good morning, everybody. How are you guys? Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is another week. We are getting everything going. Oh, we got some people sitting in the queue waiting to watch us, which is awesome.
That's amazing.
Isn't it awesome? I love it. So we would like to go ahead and welcome you guys to the show as we flip our stuff up. So hope you guys are doing well. Everybody, how are you guys? And welcome. I only need to hear one of me. I forget every time I launch. The guy's like, I get a blast of me coming back. So definitely working on it. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brenda Neckbottle, and I am known as Brenda, the HR lady. It's nothing too flashy. I'm also known as the HR force of nature among some of my clients. And with me is Suzanne Lucas, who is the evil HR lady. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning or afternoon for me.
But I know, right? So I'm in Virginia Beach. She's in Switzerland. And we're going to go ahead and pop up exactly where you guys can find us on social media. We've got an awesome show for you today. And then it's a topic, unfortunately, that we really don't want to talk about, but we recognize that what is going on in the world, we absolutely have to. And that is with what is coming up this weekend here in this country as we are preparing for our nation's birthday. And I hate to say it, but with all confidence, we're expecting some more problems. We're expecting some more violence. And that's a horrible thing to say, especially when you can say it with confidence. But you know what? We're gonna talk through some things and help you guys get ready for, it doesn't necessarily have to be this weekend, but it's coming again. Just all there to it.
Yeah, sadly, it's not over. And
it isn't.
And people that think that they've escaped any bad things, that may not be the case. So we thought it would be really important to talk through how you can prepare your business for any violence this weekend or in the future.
Exactly. So if you are watching on YouTube live and you have a question, please go ahead and type it into the chat section, and we will be more than happy to go ahead and answer that for you. So, okay. So what our goal is today is to really help you build some more confidence in preparing for something like this to happen. And we're gonna kind of kick this off. She and I are gonna divide and conquer here. So I'm really gonna be focusing in on more of the safety side, which I'm in the process of actually putting together a program with a gentleman by the name of Dave Acosta. This an HR safety program that's merged together where we work together. He is a nation's authority on active shooters. He is in an upcoming episode on my podcast show, which is the Best Practices in HR and Human Resources podcast. That's coming up next week, next Wednesday that drops, if I remember correctly. But we are in the process. So a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is kind of these thought-provoking things that you can do as an organization you probably are more ahead of where you think you are in getting prepared for it. And then he comes in and he actually works with the individuals to teach them how to go about run, hide, fight. What are some of the best practices? So that way we can increase your confidence level and really help you feel like you've got a choice. And Suzanne is going to really talk about the communication side of things, what you should be saying to your employees, what you shouldn't be saying to your employees. And we've got a lot of tips today that we're just going to crank through for you guys. And hopefully you'll be able to really walk away with some great talking points. If you guys want to get in touch with either one of us, please feel free to do so. We are here to help you guys out at any point in time. How's that sound?
Sounds great to me.
Laying the ground field. So this is going to be epic. Okay. So first thing. Yes.
First thing, let's talk about communication. And before we start communicating with employees, you really want to find out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple of ways you can do this. And actually, you should do both of these ways. One is to check and see if anything has been scheduled and permitted in your area. And you can speak with your city hall or your county or whoever does the permitting in your area and see if there's something scheduled. Now, not everything is going to be scheduled. So that's not necessarily the only way to find out, but that's something that is easy enough to do. Then you want to be looking on social media. And this is not, to look for what your employees are saying. This is to figure out what plans are going on, because these protests tend to be organized on social media. And so you can find out where people are meeting, what the plan is, and even sometimes you can kind of get an idea if it's going to be peaceful or violent. That's not a perfect way, but depending on how people are talking about it back and forth. If everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna bring a picnic lunch and the kids, then it's probably going to be a little bit safer than everybody get your bricks and march. So you want to be looking for these things. Don't just assume that it's not going to hit your neighborhood. It may or may not. I mean, depending on where you live, where your business, not where you live, but that too, but where your business is located, it might be the path. And one of the things that we saw this week on the news, which hit the news in a big way, is the couple that came out with guns against protesters. But the thing is they lived in suburbia, but people were going to protest at the mayor's house. So don't just assume, oh, my business is on a quiet side street, nothing is going to happen here. We can't assume that.
No, and I can confirm that in my circle of influence in my world that there are neighborhoods that have been scoped out by some of these guys, especially in my area. And we've already, like I said, my scope of influence, they've already informed me that they have found people that are actually scoping out neighborhoods. So it's coming, but we're not talking about the neighborhood so much as we are talking about, where we are with the business. And even though the neighborhoods are part of this, it's, if you're running your organization out of your home, be mindful that, these people they're looking to expand in what they're doing. And this is a whole new day. It's a brand new day about how things are being done. And so if you don't think that they're going to do it in a certain way, plan on the fact that they likely will, and you'll be ahead of the game.
Because you can't assume, okay, protests are always down Main Street. I'm on a side street. My business is fine. Hopefully that will be the case, but it could not be. And if your business is on Main Street, then you really need to be prepared. And of course, you've probably been through this several times already this past month. So when you know anything, then you need to start communicating with your employees. And it's really important that everyone's getting the same message. You don't want to have a situation where employee A thinks this and employee B thinks that, and then the protest outside your office turns violent and you've got your employees fighting about what to do. Right. That's going to make the situation far, far worse. So you want to make a clear plan, and you're going to want to think through everything. First of all, are you going to stay open? And this needs to be a decision that comes from the top and also gives the people on site the ability to make judgments and have them know that they do. So it's all fine if you're off in your corporate office and wherever, and you're like, no, you can stay open through all of it and we'll fire you if you do anything else. And those people are trapped in a protest and feel like they're going to lose their jobs. That's not ever a situation you want to be in. So while your guidance needs to come from the top, there also needs to be, this is when you can use your judgment and say, we're done, we're out of here. Or it's too dangerous, look at this, what's scheduled or what people are talking about on social media, we need to close. If you just don't say anything, then you put tremendous pressure on the manager of whatever location it is. Because you have someone that's going to be torn between doing what they think is right for their employees and protecting their own job. And that shouldn't be ever a situation where somebody has to feel like they have to sacrifice safety to keep their job. So make sure you give people that ability to close if they need to, but make the plan and talk about when it is dangerous and when it is not. And talk about communication. If there's somebody you want from corporate to make that call, they need to be available on the line the whole weekend. It can't just be something that we just say, okay, it's a federal holiday, so those of us in corporate, we're going to the beach. Good luck, people. You really need to let them have that opportunity to speak with whoever is making those decisions if you're not going to give that decision-making power to those people. And then if you decide you're going to stay open, or that you're going to keep people on site and be closed, but have people on site for security's sake, what's the exit plan? And even if it's not a huge danger, I want to read a little bit from someone's post on Reddit about a protest that he got stuck in. And he said, last night, June 3rd, there were protests right outside the building I normally work at on 3rd Avenue in New York City. Police actually attacked a cyclist who was just trying to cross the street and made many arrests in all the chaos. There's been looting for several nights just blocks away from the office. Since I'm IT, the guy who has to stay after hours to take care of the system updates. If I were in office last night, I would have been stuck with no way to get out of the building. Once the area was cleared, I wouldn't have been able to get a ride with Lyft or Uber, since those services are off once the current 8 p.m. curfew hits. Walking to the train station would be risky in the area. So how are your employees going to get out if there is protests going on? Can they walk out of the area? And if they can't, if it's not going to be safe, is it safe to spend the night in the office? Do you have a plan?
Okay, so this is where I'm going to pick it up, and we're going to really focus in more on this, on the security and safety stuff. So that way, so everything that Susanne is precursing up to is fantastic. All right. It's important to have your communications plan in place. Now, these are some of the elements that we have to really take into consideration. And I want to take a step back here to the very beginning. All right. Pay very close attention to what is going on in social media, because it's, yes, she's absolutely correct that you can reach out to City Hall. You can find out what protests are sanctioned, what are not. But, these organizations and these groups that are leading this in your community, they're moving forward with these. Some of them are very peaceful. It's scary and intimidating, but some of them are in fact peaceful. It's the certain times of the day that things start to get a little bit out of hand. And we learned very early on that some of these groups are actually being, seeded with individuals that their intention is to create destruction. So, pay very close attention. Don't dismiss anything that's coming your way. That's what's going to be incredibly important, to stay ahead of everything. Now, it's also very stressful. It's incredibly stressful. And if you do need to reach out and build your relationships with the law enforcement, I strongly suggest that you guys do something like that. Also, start building your relationships with your EAP provider, and make sure that, people understand as part of your communications plan that they do have an option that they can go ahead and jump into. The next thing that you guys want to do is, from a safety standpoint, is walk through and look for potential hazards that can be used against your building or that can be used against your people. So over by me, we had a peaceful protest. Thankfully, it stayed peaceful. And there was some renovations going on. And for the last, 18 months, there's been a pallet of bricks directly behind my home. And one of the things that, which is also my office, and one of the things that the location where I live, they did the day that protest was coming, is they actually removed the bricks. so that they, if anything went sideways, that they couldn't be used. So, do a walkthrough and look at your map, figure out how many exits do you guys have and in what direction are your employees going to? Because at some point in time, you're going to have to figure out how to do a head count. Does everybody know where there's a primary and a secondary exit? Okay. So these are just some things that you can think through. Look for potential hazards. Look for potential blockages, right? If you guys, have an employee that has, blocked an emergency exit, get it cleared. Those things are important because that could be a primary or a secondary to somebody. And if the primary is blocked and the secondary is blocked, now you have inadvertently trapped your people back into your building. So you want to be very careful about that. She also touched on consider, an early dismissal or, closing for the day. There's nothing wrong with doing something that is a precautionary measure. I just recently, over Memorial Day weekend, had that very same conversation with an employee up in an area where they were going to be protesting. And I said, why don't you consider moving people out, letting them leave a little bit early? Give them a couple hours headway, because number one, you're going to be dealing with excessive traffic. And number two, what if their route home is in direct path of what's going on? And recently, this past week, there was a post of a woman with a child who was leaving her work. She got stuck in the middle of a protest and people were jumping up and down on her vehicle. This was a sanctioned protest. And then I listened to the 911 tapes on it. And even though she was saying they're on my car, the person wound up she had her window broken. And the dispatcher, because it was a sanctioned protest, that there were some limitations that were put on as to what PD couldn't do. And the dispatcher was not staying up, in my opinion, on top of that, based off of what I heard. And eventually the woman got through, but in the process, she's just terrified and she's worried for the life of her safety. So, of her child. So make sure that, you're thinking through, okay, so if I let my people leave early, are they able to get home safely? And if they want to, look, if they want to participate in a peaceful protest, we've talked about this before. There's nothing wrong with that. They are entitled to, assemble lawfully. Once they throw a brick or once they start, destroying property or they cross those lines into an unlawful assembly, their rights are no longer protected. So you can treat an early dismissal like your inclement weather. If you wanted to do something like that, tap into your inclement weather time, treat it, go ahead and allow people to leave 2 hours early and give them, a 2-hour window. And if you don't have that right now, because I do understand that, funds are tight right now with what's going on, allow them to use PTO. But really their safety first and foremost is what needs to be on your mind. And if somebody is having to stay in the building, you guys have to really think of and create, okay, how are we going to protect this individual? Is there a way that we can really get them out of the building and keep them remote?
And it's so important that you talk openly about these things, because your employees are scared to death. And if you don't bring it up, they are going to think it's worse than it is. So please, please, please go ahead and talk about it.
Right.
And have those discussions and ask your employees what they think as well. Take their opinion seriously, especially if they're saying, look, this is a big concern to me. And there may be people that protests are not necessarily going to be near your business, but will prevent them from getting home. And having them say, I'd really like to go home before this starts, that's also a legitimate thing to think about. If they're going to be unable to get through.
Yeah. Now, if you're going to remain open, or even while you're open during your normal business hours, since we have seen that these protests all of a sudden just like show up, make sure that you guys are staying vigilant. All right. And don't hesitate getting your people out before it gets really ugly. If you see something that is starting to happen, you know what? Have a plan to shut it down. look what happened when the first ones happened up in Minnesota. It's just all of a sudden people were just caught completely off guard for something like that. And it just continued to get progressively worse. And unfortunately, when you have a mob mentality, that's exactly what is going to happen, is that things are going to get worse. There's nothing wrong. I mean, it's like, would you wait until the last minute to prepare for a class 5 hurricane? Probably not, right? Probably not.
Hopefully not. There are some people that have in the past and they did
Right.
not like it.
No, and they heavily regret it, right? So don't put yourself in that situation. Don't hesitate. If you're looking at an individual's safety, there is nothing wrong with taking that initiative. And you know what? If an employee is going to sit there and poo-poo you and your efforts about what you did, you know what? That's fine. They're alive, they're breathing, they're well. They can have their opinion about it. They may not necessarily think it was relevant or necessary. But, with everything that's going on right now, I guarantee you everybody in this country is concerned about this. So there are going to be a significant number of people that are going to appreciate that foresight, that, hey, listen, we're out of here. Years ago, when I was working in big box retail, it was my first night closing the location. And I was walking through and I just kept smelling natural gas, but it was so faint. And I've got a super sniffer. And a super sniffer, and I just like, where is that coming from? And I walked around the building, I couldn't do it, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody. I couldn't get a hold of the DM. I couldn't get a hold of our safety team, and I had to make the decision, and I did. And so I shut it down, and I said, everybody's out. I called the fire department. I said, can you guys come out and check this out just for peace of mind? Here it is, an hour and a half before closing. I've got all these things and all these people that I have to worry about. Nobody knows who I am. And I'm making this call. I got customers that are like, well, can I just buy one? No, get out of here. Like, oh, we got a gas leak. And so I had my team waiting out front. And sure enough, man, I'll tell you what, fire department came in and they said, we are so glad that you called. And what was happening is that the gas leak was taking place up on the roof on the air conditioner. And it wasn't until they did the bubble test on the pipe fittings were they able to actually detect it. And they said the fact that you could barely smell it was because the wind was shifting. It was coming in through the exhaustion port. There's no telling how long that gas leak was actually going on. So, trust yourself. Trust yourself that you're making the right decision for your people.
And it's as Brenda was saying, it's okay to close early. It's okay to close early and then have nothing happen. That'd be great. So don't feel like, oh, we closed early and then it was completely peaceful and we could have made a fortune selling cold drinks or whatever. It's better to be safe and to have your employees safe. The last thing you want is to put one of your employees in harm's way. And you may feel stupid for closing when you didn't need to, but that's a lot better than having to deal with an injured or killed employee.
Yeah.
And that's just not something you even want to go down that path. Make the call.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of business owners in my career think that they can handle a situation like this, and they're not trained. They're not prepared for it. I had a near stabbing, actually. And the owner of the company was not the individual that led the organization. It was another gentleman who was the CEO. And they were blowing up my phone. They're like, we got an employee that just threatened another one with a knife. And I said, well, then here's what we need to do. And it was boom, 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 boom. And I said the very first thing is that you need to have this individual professionally removed. And they called the police, and they had 5 squad cars screaming in, and they put this guy aside. And the owner of the company, once he realized what was going on, he's like, you should have called me and I could have handled it. And I barked right at him and I said, you would have been the first one that would have been stabbed. You would have been the first one killed. And it said once we learned a little bit more about the employee's background, it turned out that he actually was a former officer for a very short period of time. It was not a good separation with the police department. And, bear in mind that guy was trained in combatants. He was trained to engage in close proximity to an attacker or anything like that. So I know for a fact that he would have absolutely taken him down. So, don't think that that you can overpower or overcome somebody, because you really don't know if somebody's trained or not. And with civil unrest, a lot of these individuals are not trained, but there are a significant amount of people out there who are upset over this who are. And so it's if anything happens, it's going to get wild, and you're just better to exit sooner rather than later.
Right. And when you're talking, usually when we talk about workplace violence, it's someone within the company, and you
Right.
know a little bit about them. And, when I was doing layoffs, we would look at every person, and if we thought there might be a problem, it was we're a Fortune 50 company. We had on-site security, and our head of security was super duper qualified. And we would turn it over to him, and he would prepare, do whatever he needed to do. Now, thankfully, we never had anything major happen, but we ran it all through the expert. When you're dealing with this outside thing, you don't know what's coming.
Right.
When I'm preparing to terminate somebody, I've got their file in front of me. We've talked to their boss. We have somewhat of an idea. I mean, terminations are always a mystery until they happen, but you have somewhat of an idea. This you don't know. And so assuming that your cashier or your IT guy that's staying late is going to be perfectly capable of handling themselves is not really a good assumption, and it's unfair to the employee.
Right. And, bear in mind that OSHA has now released information out about this. So, in a very short period of time, they've acted, and they recognize that, employee safety is top concern right now in the country with everything that's going on. So, OSHA is really talking about, what happens if you have to shelter in place? What happens if you have to evacuate and move out? If you do have to, shelter in place, let's say, for example, it comes out of nowhere and you don't really know what to do, and it's not safe for your employees to leave. You know what? Then you get on the horn and you talk to the authorities and just say, we are sheltering in place. We're in a darkened room. We've got everything locked. We've got the doors barricaded. We're doing everything that we can to ensure the safety of our employees. We need to understand our exit. Can you help us with it? Now, likely they're going to be dealing with the crowd, but as long as you start, working on that relationship with local authorities, they will absolutely do what they can to help you get out. Just be prepared that it is the long game. It is not anything that's going to happen in the short term.
And the other thing that you need to think about, and you need to tell your employees, if they're going to be sheltering in place, they're going to be trapped in that situation. What are they going to do? They're going to pull out their phones. What are you not wanting them to do? Posting, I'm trapped at work.
Yes.
And that type of thing, I mean, that's like our natural tendencies now. It's like, whatever I'm doing, I must tell the entire world, this is what I'm eating, this is what I'm doing at work. And now look, I'm trapped in this room and it's really boring. We have the light out and there's stuff going on outside. I'm nervous, whatever. I want to post on it. I'm going to tweet this. This is interesting. And then you put in the hashtag for whatever the protest is. You don't want that. Because if there are people with nefarious intent, and now they know because they're following the hashtag on Twitter themselves, oh, there's a bunch of people in this building. That's not what you want out there. I mean, most protesters are good people with no intention of hurting anybody. And even I think most of the people that are being destructive aren't really interested in hurting random people. But if you're a bad person, that's also what you're doing.
And I would disagree, because what we're seeing out there is that people are working on injuring and harming random people. And like if this turns into an active shooter situation, active shooters, their number one goal is body count. So get your employees to understand, silence their phones, because once everybody understands what's going on, everybody's going to be calling that one person that's on their phone, at work, wanting to see if they're okay and that they're safe. Have them text one or two family members and just say, listen, make sure that people know I'm okay. I'll keep you posted. not to mention, if you think about it, all the cellular activity that's going on during a time period of chaos and confusion, what happens if those cell towers start going down, or the networks get clogged up so there is no ability to communicate because everybody's trying to communicate, um, just because of the chaos and what's going on. Silencing the cell phone is something that if you drill that into your employees, and somebody does penetrate the building and they come in and they're looking for problems and they're looking to create, those quieted cell phones, no pinging, no texting, no ringing, right? None of those sounds, believe it or not, it saves lives. So, this is serious stuff. And we're getting really into, to the deep on this. I completely agree with what Suzanne is saying about not posting anything. The media is looking for panic. They're looking for stuff, and you don't want to have anything draw unnecessary attention on you guys. So, recognizing that the employees are nervous and scared, tell them just like, look, you can share your experience and he will help you understand how to do that after this. But right now we got to get through right now, and posting and filming and doing all that. That's not what we need to focus in on right now. We need to just be prepared.
And with that, no speaking with the media either. And people may think that, oh, this is really great, I can get out what's going on. And it's not for your employees to do. And they need to understand that they aren't to give any interviews to the media. If you ever watch the news, they have a tremendous way of making whoever is speaking to them look stupid. And so unless you have your trained PR person standing there, nobody is to speak with the media. And not even of this is my own, how I'm feeling scared, because again, it's going to reflect on your business. And if your employee is not working and is at the protest on their own, then absolutely they're free to do whatever they'd like, as long as they're not breaking the law. But when they're at work, no media. And I can tell you as a media person that there are, when we're talking about, no tweeting, Instagramming or whatever the kids do these days, no making TikTok videos, I don't know. There are journalists who are monitoring those specifically to find someone that can talk.
Yes. Absolutely.
And if you say, I'm at, Bob's accounting office and I'm trapped, and I, the reporter, am like, hey, I'm going to call Bob's accounting office so I can get, the firsthand experience by putting his employees on the line. And it's great television. It's great television. If I can get you on the phone and get you crying, not that I do this because I don't do that type of media, but there are reporters that do that. If I can get you crying and whatever, and then we bring your mom on, I'm so worried. Yeah, that's ratings gold, and you don't want that.
Right, exactly. And the media is not necessarily sensitive to your employees. The media, if you remember, the big flood that took place down in Texas a while ago, I'm going to say it was maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. There was a reporter that was standing in a shelter, and she came up and just shoved that microphone right into somebody's face and say, like, how was it? And a woman just blasted the reporter. She goes, I just got out of a horrid situation. I have no place to go into it. Get that thing out of my face. Right. They don't care. They're looking for the sensationalism right now. The other piece too is that they're looking for easy access, but you guys also remember that with what's going on right now, as far as our work environments go, we have a blended workforce, meaning that we have some people working in office and we have people that are working from home. Your employees that are at home, working out of their home offices, are going to be in just as much of a panic emotionally as the individuals who are on scene. Probably not nearly as much, but at the same level, because now they're fearful of their employees, their coworkers, and what's going to happen to my employer. They're scared as well. And they're going to be glued to that television. Depending on your circumstances, and if you have a mass media communication system, you send out brief updates to individuals who are outside. There's a lot of things that you can do to control the communication and make sure that employees understand what it is that you need them to do in order to ensure that everybody is accounted for and everybody is safe.
Yeah, I mean, it is a situation where you do want to have your head count, and you want to know where people are. Our first priority as employers is to keep our employees safe. It's not to the shareholders. It really is to keeping our employees safe. And there are some things, employees don't lose all of their rights either. They have the ability to talk about their workplace conditions. And if they feel like you're going to force them into an unsafe situation, that's a discussion about workplace conditions. So don't punish people for bringing their fears to you,
Right.
because that's protected activity. And they have a really good case in a lot of situations for saying, look, you're ignoring our safety if we're expected to keep on working through the middle of this.
Yeah. And that kind of takes on a whole new color right now, because at what point does an employer, how far does an employer go? And I think a lot of leaders are starting to ask that question. It's like, well, there's only so much that we're capable of doing. And yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. But I think there is a question, is like, how far should you go? And in today's world, it's further than it was a year ago, and so I think you guys have to figure out those boundaries for yourself.
And it's something that requires discussion, and you should hopefully have already had this discussion, but if you haven't, have it today. Don't wait until the next scheduled protest in your area. It's too late. And as I said, it's possible that you are on the quietest little suburban side street and you think there's nothing. I mean, here we are completely out of the main. It's possible. The protesters have been targeting specific people's houses, and maybe that person lives on your street and you don't know. Or maybe it's the way to wherever they want to go. Whatever it is, don't just assume that because it's been peaceful in the past, it'll be peaceful in the future. And because your street has been empty in the past, that it'll be empty in the future. Hopefully it is. Hopefully it is. Fingers crossed, everybody goes to work and comes home and everything's safe and nothing's broken and everybody is fine. But again, then you need to think about, how can my employees get home from work? If the area is blocked off, if public transportation is not running, if Uber or taxis are not running, if they can't drive out of it without crossing a protest route, think about these things. Think about them. And just thinking about them from a purely selfish standpoint, if you sit down with your employees and say, let's make a safety plan, let's figure out worst case scenario, and nothing goes wrong and everything is beautiful and it's a beautiful weekend and nothing happens, and they will still think, gosh, my employer cares about me.
Yep.
And that's worth its weight in gold to you as an employer. So from a selfish standpoint, to have all of your employees say, gosh, here at Bob's Accounting, Bob really cares about our safety. That's really important for your employees and really important for your turnover. Because if you say to your employees, look, we're on a side street, you guys are wimps, it's going to be fine, suck it up, even if everything is fine, they walk away going, Bob doesn't care about us.
Yeah.
And so as soon as, Sue's House of Accounting is hiring, they're going to jump ship. Because why would they want to stay with you? So if you're thinking about this in terms of, well, I can't afford to close down, or I can't afford to put security, or I can't afford to have skeleton crew, you can't afford not to. Turnover is far more expensive than replacing a broken window.
Yes.
It is. People don't see the cost of turnover because it's hidden in lots of different ways. But really, for most jobs, the cost of turnover is anywhere from 50% of the annual salary to 2 times the annual salary.
Yep.
So replacing that broken window, far cheaper than turnover.
Now, after all is said and done, now comes Monday. We don't know what Saturday, Sunday are going to look like. But once it's all done, and if you have been in that position to where you had to act, you now have to switch your gears from being in that reactive mode to back into a proactive mode again. And that is getting your EAP involved, getting your EAP on site, working with them. And just trust me, do not take no for an answer on that one. The near stabbing that I've mentioned before, that situation happened on a Friday. And I'm going to tell you right now, it was an 18-hour day just dealing with a near stabbing. And nobody got hurt, thank goodness. But it was an 18-hour day until that day actually settled down. By Monday morning, I had a clinician on site, and we had that person there for 5 hours. And we let the entire team know that, the situation is under control, that we do have somebody here in case anybody has concerns and would like to speak to somebody. And I worked very, very closely with the clinician. I kept the CEO completely out of the one-on-one engagements with the employees because that company had a senior HR person in place, and I was their consultant. And she handled those employee-related concerns. We had the CEO focused in on the overarching message. And oddly enough, when I talked to the clinician after the visit, she goes, well, I had about 6 people visit. And I was like, okay, how did it go? And she goes, I can tell you right now that nobody's really scared about what happened with the stabbing. I said, well, that's good. And I said, well, what did they talk about? And she goes, well, they want to know why they can't take a full hour lunch and they only get a half hour. And I said, okay, okay, so that's good news. We'll fix that. But at least people were talking. I mean, that's the good point, right? So,
well, it's not only that they were talking, they know that you have their back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's exactly where I was going, is like, you know what, you give people the opportunity to voice whatever's on their mind, they'll do it. And then you just have to respond to it. But you're going to be managing a lot of that. You're going to be in trauma management after something like this happens. And it's going to look different for every single situation. I mean, you can think of a million different things and you'll be up against 1,000,001. You never know what's going to happen. And the more prepared you are, and that really is the crux of this message, is that the more prepared you are, you're building up your confidence. And that way people just understand what's expected of them. And the likelihood that you guys will get through this safer, faster, better, it just increases itself by tenfold the more you focus in on it.
And keep in mind, none of this is happening in a vacuum. Everybody is already stressed out. That quote that I read from the Reddit post, he was talking about a riot on June 3rd. We're talking about potential riots and protests on July 4th. This is a month on top of the COVID crisis. Everybody is stressed out anyway. So making sure that there is some mental health help at this point is a really great idea, even if your employees have been at home. As Brenda said, just because they're at home doesn't mean they're not affected
Right.
by it. And it can be very, very scary in your city. And, different cities are very different. And, me here in Switzerland, we had our Black Lives Matter protest and nobody even left, any litter because their grandmothers would beat them with their canes if they dropped anything on the ground. Culture plays a different role here. This is a country run by stereotyped women.
Very vastly different environment in Switzerland.
Vastly different environment here. And compare that to what we saw in Minneapolis, which could use a few Swiss grandmas to smack some people over the head for bad behavior.
Yeah. I mean, here in Virginia Beach, every night down at the waterfront, in a certain section of the waterfront, is 2 to 3 shootings a night right now.
Oh my goodness.
And that never happened before until we had the rioting and the looting that took place. It was a relatively okay demonstration. And then, we saw the buses coming in live. And once those buses arrived, 10 minutes later, it was hell.
Gosh, that's scary.
Yep.
That's really scary.
Yep. So it just shows that this country's a tinderbox right now. It really is. And people are out for bad intentions, and you can't write that off.
And the other thing that you're going to find is that your employees may be on different sides of this. And you may end up with some conflict within the company. And again, your best bet is some open communication. And as we've talked about before, it's okay to say, look, politics don't have a place here. We do our jobs. This is a place to get away from it. And then what you do off hours is your business. Protest whatever you'd like to protest. We just want to see you on time.
Yeah, and we want you to be healthy.
Yes, we want to see you on time, and we want you to be healthy. Yep. And we want you to be physically healthy from not getting injured, and we would like it if you didn't come back with COVID. So if you're choosing to protest, put your mask on.
We did so good. 46 minutes into the show, and not once did we mention COVID until you.
I know, but I have to, because it's all of this stress, right?
Yeah.
It
is a stressful time.
If we were just having protests, they wouldn't have turned so violent. I really believe that all of the pressure everyone's under just makes everybody crack. That's to be expected. High stress results in poor behavior from time to time.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And you know what? Yeah. This is just the launch of it for the long haul for a little while. It's an election year. And I think there's a lot of this that is, we're not here to talk about politics, but I think a lot of this is influenced by it being an election year, because election years get really ugly. And we've seen that. We've seen that really since 2000 with the Bush and Gore administration, where it really took that new level. The Bush and Gore campaigns. And, it's not gonna diminish. 4 years ago when President Trump, was brought in, we had protests. We had different kinds of protests, and they were isolated. This is a much more wide swathing event, and this is going to continue. And I hate to say this, and to be able to be right, it just makes me sick. But we're going to be seeing this through whatever the inauguration is.
Yes, I think that you're right. And this is another reason why it's better sooner rather than later to make your plans. Because if you guys are safe this weekend and everything is brilliant, no problem, awesome. Yep. What about next weekend? What about in September? What about in November after the presidential candidate of People's Choice doesn't win? There's never going to be a situation where the whole country goes, oh, yay, I'm so glad this person won. if we could find that candidate, that would be awesome. But right now, Americans are really divided. I don't think it's going to go away easily. I
No,
don't think people are going to walk away from the election and go, oh, well, we'll try again in 4 years.
no. It's a very polarized nation. Very polarized.
So
It's very
anyway,
polarized. So just get ready that this is a conversation that's going to have to continue for a while, and that ups your stress level. Make sure you take care of yourself.
yeah, that is important too. And we've talked a little bit about that the past few weeks about making sure that you build boundaries around your hours that you're working. And especially, from an HR standpoint, a lot of the times this health and safety stuff falls on HR's shoulders. And we're not necessarily trained for it. As I said, when I was doing terminations, we turned every security concern over to the head of security, who was super well trained. I don't remember all of his training, but he had been a police chief and he'd been in the military, and super, super nice guy, but he knew what he was talking about. Your small business probably doesn't have a former police chief running your security. I'm guessing that you don't, because you're not a Fortune 50 company and can't afford that level of security skill. So for me, I've never been trained in it because I always worked for big companies, and we had security people who are experts. A lot of these small companies, you don't have security people who are experts. It falls on HR to make sure that people are safe.
Yep.
And it's also okay to ask questions. It's okay. And it's okay to say to your boss, I don't know what we should do here. Maybe we should bring someone in.
Yep.
It's okay to hire a consultant.
Yep, absolutely. And if you need that help, reach out, because we've got access to that. Again, we're working on this program. I'm working on this program with Dave, and this is actually a direction that we're moving in. So, Suzanne's got great ideas. We're here to help out in any way we can. I think it's important. Let's just quickly do a quick rundown on all the points that we talked about, so you guys can actually sit down and put this together. So first and foremost, make sure that you guys communicate what you're doing, and communicate how you're doing it with your employees. Okay. Have your communications plan in place. That's very important. Okay. Make sure that you, as part of that, you help people understand how you want your employees to respond. All right. Pay very close attention to what's going on in the environment, internally, externally. Watch social media. You can, reach out to your local emergency departments. The Virginia State Emergency Department, I pay very close attention to what's going on there. Pay attention to social media. Listen to what's going on in your workforce with your individuals. Walk through the building. Okay. Walk through your facility. Make sure that there are no potential hazards that can be used against your building or used against your people. Make sure your exits are free and clear. Make sure your cameras are up and running if you have them. Okay. Don't put false cameras up. Don't do that. That's bad. Those are not really effective deterrents. That's a waste of money. Consider early dismissal. Okay. And closing for the day. And, go ahead and treat it like an inclement weather day if you'd like. Just, again, it's about getting people the ability to get them home, keep them safe. If it turns out that you have to remain open, stay vigilant. All right. Don't hesitate to get your people out as soon as you see the first sign of trouble. Don't believe that it's going to pass, because as soon as you see trouble, it's only going to get worse. And if you do have individuals that have to remain in, find the quickest and best way that they can get out. If you have to shut down operations and your IT department has to work remotely, then that's what you need to do to ensure that people are safe. Okay. And then lastly, if you have to shelter in place, make sure that you're in communication with authorities. Make sure that you're working with your employees to silence their phone, not post on social media. Once you get the all clear to go ahead and rise, make sure that employees are not talking to anybody that they shouldn't. The media reporters. They're not blasting everything, quickly on social media. At some point in time, they're going to want to let people know that they're okay. That's great. And then make sure that you stay in communication with your remote employees so that they, in fact, are not also clogging up your communications to make sure that everything's all right. Because look, good people, they just want to take action. And that's really what it comes down to.
And they are concerned about their coworkers as well. They should be, and you should be concerned as well. And it's so important that you make this plan in advance. How are you going to do this? And as it said, this isn't a one-shot deal. There's going to be more protests. There are.
Yep. But really the goal is to raise your confidence level so that if in fact you are in a position where you have to do something, you have that level of confidence now to do it. That's the whole mission behind all of this. So it's not to scare everybody. It's not to like, oh my gosh, they're just making a mountain out of a molehill. It's like, well, you know what? We've dealt with the mountains that everybody thought were molehills. We have a career on it. We probably, between the two of us, have about 50 to 60 years of dealing with mountains out of molehills. So
that's right. That's absolutely right. Something that's little can really just cause huge problems in the long run.
Yeah. So we don't want that. We want you guys to feel good. We want you to feel safe as well.
Absolutely.
So our last 5 minutes here, Susanne, is there anything else that you want to add before we kind of share with people on our groups and all the fun stuff that we normally do?
I hope everybody has a wonderful 4th of July, and I'm very sad that everyone's fireworks have been canceled. But I hope everyone has a great one. And I will be celebrating over here in Switzerland with my other American friends and one British friend who is, going to berate us for being ungrateful colonists. But we'll be over here eating American style food and watching Hamilton. So that's
oh my gosh, you totally brought up a memory over Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, or is it after? Anyway, we were at a session at the Honor Foundation, and I had met a local businessman who's actually from England. And so, we were sitting down having dinner, and the CEO of the Honor Foundation, Matt, was there, and he's asking, Ben about his story, and then he said, well, he said, then we had Thanksgiving. I mean, Ben's an amazing guy. He's adopted nine special needs children with Down syndrome. And yes, he and his wife are just amazing, just super, super great, turning their success into giving it back. And so anyway, we were sitting around talking, and all of a sudden the conversation of Thanksgiving came up, and Ben just looks over at Matt and he goes, well, Thanksgiving. He says, yes, we celebrated that too. So you're welcome. We just cracked up because it was like, all right, 400 years ago, it was hysterical. It was hilarious. But so, okay, guys. So Susanne and I both have groups that you guys are welcome to join us in. We've got a couple of really awesome teams that we work with. So Susanne, why don't you go ahead and first and share your group?
Absolutely. You can join us on Facebook at Evil HR Lady, and said we are mostly HR people, but a lot of other people that just enjoy talking about business. And it's the most helpful group on the internet. If you have a question about HR policy or dealing with a tough situation, you can post over there and people will give you their wisdom and insight. It's a great group. Absolutely. So that's Evil HR Lady on Facebook.
Yeah, there's some great conversation that comes out. And then over in my group, we've got the Next Gen Women in HR group. And really what we're focusing in on lately has been talking about, how to deal with not having enough time for everything that you want to do. You simply don't know what to do. And how do you build that support from your company and from your bosses? And so this is a fun group. They're a really engaged group of individuals. And we've only been around not quite 7 months. We've got about 160 people over there. and we do free webinars. And, this is just another aspect of engaging in HR because as we both know, success does not come in a straight line, and it sure as hell does not happen in this field. That's for sure.
No, it doesn't. And especially since a lot of cases in a lot of companies, HR people are solo or two HR people. And so you don't have the benefit of a department to bounce ideas off of. So both Brenda's group, the Next Gen HR, and my group, Evil HR Lady, are both designed to do that.
Yep.
We'll turn your HR department of one into an HR department of thousands. So come on over.
Yep, absolutely.
We'd love to see you.
Join the conversation. So, and you guys, you know what? Listen, we want to thank you for coming in again today. Feel free to join us. We are going to be back here again on Tuesday at 9 a.m. We have no idea what we're going to talk about just yet, but that's all right. We actually don't know that until the day before because we want to keep everything that we're doing relevant. We want to keep it real time. And we really just appreciate you guys joining us week after week. So thank you very much.
All right. See you guys later.
You guys have a good, safe holiday. Oop, I hit an extra button. Sorry.
Are we off?
Nope.